Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 10 of Hurd in the House, the podcast for Colorado's 3rd Congressional District. Today's guest is the chairman of the House Committee on Appropriations, Congressman Tom Cole of Oklahoma. If you've ever wondered who actually decides how taxpayer dollars are spent on defense, biomedical research, disaster relief, tribal programs, infrastructure, that work happens on the Appropriations Committee. It is where governing becomes real. Tom Cole is a fifth-generation Oklahoman, an enrolled member of the Chickasaw Nation, and one of only a handful of Native Americans serving in Congress. He has served since 2003 and now oversees the process that funds everything from our national defense to medical research to local infrastructure. Over the years, Chairman Cole has been ranked as one of the most effective legislators in Congress, and he has a reputation for getting things done. Chairman Cole, welcome to Hurd in the House.
Hey, Jeff, great to be with you.
So, Chairman Cole, you have a Ph.D. from the University of Oklahoma and originally planned to become a historian, but you once made a promise to your mother that brought you into politics. What was that promise?
You've clearly done your research. I told my mother, who was very interested in politics and had become a sort of worker bee in the Republican Party. She was started as a precinct chairman and then was a county, official and district official, and kind of did that and ran a lot of local campaigns, of local parts of bigger campaigns. But she was finally talked into running for the state legislature in what was then a very Democratic state, and in a challenging year, 1976, where, of course, we lost the presidency. But she ran a great race. And I was in graduate school at that time at the University of Oklahoma. We actually lived immediately adjacent to her district, and so I could have done a lot, and I didn't do very much. I mean, I put out some signs, whatever, and she lost very narrowly. And as I like to tell people, the worst place on the planet is your mother's watch party the night she loses and you didn't do everything you could have done.
Sure.
And I thought a lot about the campaign, and we used to always have Sunday dinner together. My wife and I would come up and get the laundry done, and because they had a washing machine and we didn't. Graduate students don't live very well. And we were talking over the dinner table. I said, "Mom, I think I figured out why you lost." And she gave me this skeptical look and said, "Really? Well, why?" And I said, "Because you tried to be both the campaign manager and the candidate," which is a very common first-time candidate mistake, particularly for local office, and particularly for people that have been doing that function for others. They just assume, and they do it better, and they get all the volunteers there, but they don't have enough time knocking the door, being the candidate, and out front. And I told her that, explained it to her, and I said, "So if you ever run again, I'll run the campaign. I'll learn how to run a campaign. I think you would win." I never in a million years believed she would take me up on that, or I probably would have never made the commitment. But roll around to February of '78. I was actually in London on a Fulbright fellowship at Queen Mary College at the University of London, and finishing up on my doctorate, and get the call, and Mom said, "I'm running. When are you coming home?" And she knew I was coming back in June of '78. I was teaching summer European history courses at the University of Oklahoma. And so I did. I got there, and I went to see my dissertation advisor, department head, immediately, and said, "I'm on full fellowship here, and I have this teaching opportunity. I'm going to teach the classes because I need the money, quite frankly. But I want to be honest with you. I'm not going to be working on my dissertation from now until this is over in November. This is going to be full time for me. I'm not going to let my mother lose again." And they were wonderful about it. They said, "Hey, you're our best student. You do the teaching."
What were you studying?
I was studying, again, I was finishing my dissertation. So you have 4 different fields.
And you were a Fulbright scholar, weren't you?
Yeah, I was Fulbright scholar, Watson. I was a real deal on my way to being a historian, and was an historian. I mean, published a couple of pieces. But they said, okay. And so I spent that summer putting together the campaign, organizing, doing, raising the money, doing a lot of the different things you do. And she won. And she went on and had a great career. She did 3 terms in the state house, then did term in the state Senate, temporarily retired. I took her Senate seat, then I got
And
a
she
job in
succeeded you.
D.C. We're the only mother, because I got an opportunity to come up here and actually run as the top staff person, the executive director of the National Republican Congressional Committee. And so I came to do that, and the only person that could hold the seat, it was a very Democratic area, was her. And she came out of retirement, finished my term, did another term. So she had quite a career in the state Senate, then was along the way mayor of our hometown. So very successful local politician. But in the course of running that first campaign, I found out, number one, I really like doing politics. And number two, it reminded me, when I was a kid, I was a pretty good high school and small college football player, D3, nothing serious. And, I like team sports. And if you're in a locker room after a game is, again, a lot like a watch party after an election. You fought together with a group of people for someone and something that you believed in. You fought and struggled. You win or lose, but it's a very bonding experience. And I always enjoy. And there's a particular day, and there's a score. I mean, you know who won. So I liked that, and just started knocking around doing it for free. Ended up getting paid to do it. Then the state party came knocking. Could you be the executive director? And it put my life in a different direction, a political direction. Went on, served in the state Senate, served as Secretary of State in Oklahoma. Had founded with two partners a political firm that still exists, runs races all over the country, a polling operation. So got deeply into that, and along the way stumbled into elected office at a period that I thought that was behind me. My career has been an accidental career along the way, but no question the person that got me interested and the person that got me deeply involved was my mom.
And your mom is Helen, right?
Correct.
And what did you learn about politics from watching her?
First of all, I learned how important it was. I mean, she took it very seriously. The family actually has a political history that's Native American. My great-grandfather, her grandfather, was the last tribal treasurer of the Chickasaw Nation, and that's no small deal. We're an 80,000-member tribe with a multi-billion-dollar budget and 14,000 employees. His father had been the chief clerk of the Chickasaw Supreme Court, which was also an elected position. So Mom sort of had politics in her blood, I think. And she was always just very, very interested in it. So I learned how important it was. But I also learned how important it was to listen to people. She was certainly instinctively conservative and belonged in the Conservative Party, but she was a naturally empathetic person, and she was exceptionally good at building bipartisan alliances and relationships. Her entire time in the Oklahoma legislature, she was in the minority. And yet, in 10 of the, I think, 15 or 16 years she was a legislator, she was voted one of the top 10 legislators every year because she knew how to get stuff done. And she thought it was important, and she really did honestly put her constituents' needs first. She was one of the best door-to-door campaigners I ever met. You couldn't meet her and not like her. And I always say in my district, I'm the congressman until I'm in my own hometown, and then all I am is Helen Cole's little boy. So she had quite an impact, and it's still amazing to me as I travel my district because the family historically is from another part of my district than where I live today, but we've been living in this district on her side of the family for 175 years, and on my dad's side for 140 years. So wow. It really is home. But the range of relationships she had, the number of people that she knows and knew, and the number of times that people bring her up to me is just extraordinary.
So I wonder if that sort of sets you on a course eventually towards appropriations. I mean, it's not about cable news debates, at least from my looking at it. Much of it is sitting in a room with people who disagree and figuring out how to fund the government anyway. Of the things that you've done, teaching, working in politics, serving in Congress, what's best prepared you to manage strong personalities and still get to yes?
Probably thinking, what would my mother do, sort of thing, because I think she was a master at personal relationship politics, and legislating is very much that. That helped a lot. And frankly, history is a great background for politics. If wisdom is really based on human experience, you learn more about human experience as studying history, whatever period, whatever time. I mean, everything changes except human beings. They're pretty much the same. We're all made of the same clay. We react the same way. A lot of our achievement is what are the institutions and the traditions around us that have developed over time that shape what we do as an individual. But and if you like people, politics is a great profession because you're going to meet all kinds. Everything from saints to sinners to shysters to entrepreneurs, and I like that. And my mom genuinely liked people. I mean, this is not a bit. If you don't like people, this is really the wrong business for you. And you have to be willing to like people that don't agree with you, yeah, that have a different point of view. But you know the ones that have a different point of view, but you can deal with, and maybe you got a common set of values, or you can define something, or even when you disagree, they know how to do it without being disagreeable, so to speak. So. Again, I watched my mother as a legislator and just as a person manage relationships, I wouldn't say her advantage, to mutual advantage. Where are the common things we can work on together, recognizing we don't agree on this or that? And so she was extraordinarily popular, actually, with her Democratic counterparts. And again, just and she never gave an inch on what she believed, but she also could almost always intuitively figure out, okay, these are the things that we believe in common. We're going to fight over here. We're not going to agree over here. Or these are the things we have to do together that can only be done with us working. And again, to your point earlier, appropriations is very much that way. We don't have the tool of reconciliation that we used to pass the one big beautiful bill. So if you got to get to 60 in the Senate because of the filibuster you do, right, then we only have 53 Republicans there. So when they're putting something together, they got to figure out how to get 7 Democrats at least in appropriations. Usually it takes more than that. And I always say, as soon as they get to 60 in the Senate, I'm going to lose 20 or 30 Republican votes in the House. So I'm going to have to work with Democrats here, and I know it early, even though I'm in the majority. And it doesn't really matter how big our majority is. We usually, because of the filibuster, we don't get to legislate in isolation. Passing something here is fine, but if it can't pass the United States Senate and it won't be signed by the president, then it's not going to become law. So there's lots of different things to think through, and honestly, the bill will change and evolve over time, sometimes in predictable ways. It'll start out being very partisan to get out of the committee, because that usually comes out on straight party line votes, but over time, it'll evolve into a more bipartisan product. If it doesn't, it won't pass the Senate.
So let's step back for listeners. What does the Appropriations Committee actually do, and how is it different from the other committees that write policy?
Yeah, it's well, first of all, it basically funds the day-to-day operation of the government. It has 12 subcommittees. It produces 12 bills. They range everything. The biggest one is defense, which is half of what we spend. The entire, what's called the discretionary budget of the United States, which is what we manage, is $1.7 trillion in round numbers. The entire budget of the United States, which people think we manage but we don't, is about $6 trillion. But most of what the United States government spends is Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Those three programs together,
the mandatory spending.
That's right, are 60% of all spending. And that's actually where, if you have a unbalanced budget, that's usually where it's coming from. I'll give you an example. As you know, Hal Rogers of Kentucky, who's a former chairman of the full Appropriations Committee, is our longest-serving member in the House, called the Dean of the House. So Hal Rogers arrives here in 1981 as a young member from Kentucky, joins the Appropriations Committee in 83. In 81, when he arrived, the Appropriations Committee controlled 45% of all federal spending, and because we don't do Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. The rest of it was that and the national debt mostly. Uh, and we spent 9.8% of the gross national product of the richest country in the world, the United States government. That was directly within our control. Today, we control 26%.
It's decreased.
Yeah, absolutely. And we control only 6.4% of the GDP. So if we're running a deficit, it's not because we're spending more on appropriations. It's because these other programs have grown.
On autopilot.
Yep, on autopilot. And there's not been... We have adjusted from time to time. I mean, Ronald Reagan, dealt with Social Security, which was within 3 months of across-the-board cuts in 1983. And people always say, well, you can't do it. Well, Ronald Reagan, working with a Democratic speaker, Tip O'Neill, and a Republican majority leader in the United States Senate, Howard Baker of Tennessee, set up a commission. It was independent. It was bipartisan. The point is they got it done, and Ronald Reagan won 49 states in 1984. And, by the way, Tip O'Neill stayed Speaker of the House. So this idea that you can't work seriously with these things is a myth. But it is true that politicians quite often politicize them. I saw George Bush try to do the same thing in 2005, and honestly, Nancy Pelosi was more interested in scoring political points, and so she blew it up, and we lost the majority in '06. Now, that's not why we lost it. We lost the majority because we were in two unpopular wars, and it was a midterm and the second term where you normally do lose. But politicians draw lessons, and so it's, oh, my gosh, you can't touch Social Security or you'll get killed. Well, if you sit down with people of goodwill that want to solve the problem, and that's what appropriations does on an annual basis. I've got to have somebody sitting across from me, and I do, in Rosa DeLore of Connecticut. She's a former chair of the full committee. She's the current ranking member of the committee. We have worked together on we worked on the toughest bill there is, Labor, Health, Human Services, and Education, second largest spending bill after defense, for 8 years, 4 of which I was chairman and then ranking member, 4 of which she was chairman. She would be anybody's liberal. I like to think I'm a pretty conservative guy. But the point is, starting in different directions, 8 times out of 8 years, we came to an agreement that we could both vote for on final passage. So you've got to have that skill set to be a good appropriator. It's if you can't work with people on the other side of the aisle to get something done, knowing that it has to be bipartisan, it has to be bicameral, and it has to be acceptable to the President of the United States, whoever that is, then you're on the wrong committee. If you just want to be here, there are certain committees, and I respect all the committees, but each one has a unique culture, and things like judiciary, most of the time, not always, or oversight, or what I call shirts and skins committee. I mean, you know where everybody's going to be, and it's a team sport. You're going to drive it home. Appropriations can be that way at times, but in the end, it won't be that way on the final bill to get it done. Because again, if I can't get over the filibuster in the Senate, and Republicans have never had control of the filibuster. Democrats have done it very rarely, a few times. But so I know if I can't find a way to get some Democrats, and again, I'm going to have some Republicans that will then go, oh my gosh, we can't give a single inch. Well, if you can't give an inch, I can't get over 60. Mm-hmm. And by the way, I've been, not chairman. Well, I've been chairman of the committee with a Democratic president, but you got a Democratic president. That's another set of problems. You still got to govern the country, and appropriations bills, one way or the other, a spending bill only lasts for a year, and so it's either got to be renewed or it's got to be reworked every single year. The other committees don't have to produce something every single year. On Ways and Means or Energy and Commerce, very important bills. But you can swing for the fences and strike out, and everything stays the same. So I call them home run committees. We're a singles committee. We got to get on base every year, and we've got to get the process completed every year, or you have either a shutdown or a continuing resolution, which would mean like you don't change anything. And think about your own family budget. One year you need a roof, one year you need a car, another year little Johnny's going to college, whatever it is, that budget has to change to reflect the changing realities of your family. Same thing in business, same thing in government. So long-term CRs just lock you into spending that doesn't make sense anymore, or deny you the ability to spend money on things you absolutely have to have.
So that is a really good point. One of the things that, as a freshman member, we got all 12 appropriations bills passed out of the House of Representatives, and we got 11 out of 12 currently signed by the president. There's still one that's out there, but we did our job in the House and passed all of our appropriations bills, which I think is a tremendous achievement and accomplishment, particularly in such a closely divided Congress, and that's a testament to you, Chairman Cole. But let me ask, so we did our job this year. Now, in the past, Congress hasn't always done that. It hasn't always passed spending bills on time. What best explains that? Is it a structural incentive problem or something else?
Well, part of it is structural, and part of it's by choice. And again, anytime you've got to get to 60 and you've got 53, and that's a choice by the Senate. That's not the law of the land. That's not in the Constitution. The filibuster is a Senate rule. Now, senators will tell you violently that's the only way to preserve liberty. Look, I can recognize the utility and the function of the rule. I kind of tend to think the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, are a little more important than Senate rules in defending the liberty of the American people. But senators are senators, and I'll defer to their egos. But again, that affects. So that's a structural inhibitor that's built in the system. The second thing is. American politics are much more polarized and much more divisive now, even than when I got to Congress in 2003. And it's gotten steadily more challenging. You can't complain about it. And it's not due to things that happen up here. It happens in the country. I'll give you an example. 2003, when I arrived, Arkansas has right next to Oklahoma, has 4 congressmen and 2 senators, obviously. Three of those 4 were very conservative Democrats, and both senators. Now they're all very conservative Republicans, and it's almost unthinkable a Democrat could win a seat in Arkansas. At the same time, when I arrived in Congress, Connecticut, deep blue Connecticut, where Rosa DeLauro is from, and where she was already in the Congress of the United States. She was elected, I think, in 1990, if I recall correctly. 3 of the 5 seats were Republican. They're all Democrat now. And so over the course of my career, I've watched the blue parts of the country become bluer and the red parts come redder. And there were dozens and dozens of so-called blue dog Democrats when I was here that genuinely were conservative. They're almost all gone now. They're almost an extinct breed.
Only a handful.
Yeah, and there were lots more moderate northeastern Republicans. I mean, we had both seats in New Hampshire. We'd had seats in Massachusetts. Maine was competitive. Both senators from Maine were Republicans. I mean, right now Susan Collins is the last standing Republican in all of New England. Not a House member, not a senator. But again, the South was a great source of Democratic strength, really into the early 90s, early 2000s. Particularly, you go back and look at states like Tennessee and Georgia, look at how many rural seats the Democrats hold. They don't hold any rural seats in those places now. So the country, again, has shifted politically. The Republican Party over time has grown, but it's also the Democratic Party, absent those conservative Democrats, has moved considerably to the left. I mean, we're a more populist party today as Republicans. And again, I spent a lot of time in Republican politics. I was chief of staff to the Republican National Committee in 2000. We won the presidency in both houses of Congress in the same election for the first time in 48 years. So we're a very different party than we were then, but we're not much more conservative, to tell you the truth. The Democratic Party is a much smaller party than it was when I was growing up, and it's much more progressive and much further to the left. And they've actually lost more people. I mean, again, when I was a kid growing up, 20 odd, Ronald Reagan's running for presidency, less than 30% of the American electorate said they were Republicans. More than 40% said they were Democrats, really in the mid to high 40s. Today, they're about the same size. They're both hovering in the mid 30s, large independent bloc. But a lot of that's the absorption of conservative Democrats, particularly in the South and Southwest, out of the old Democratic coalition. And conversely, they've absorbed a lot of our more moderate elements in the Northeast and Upper Midwest over time. So, again, anybody that tells you politics in America is static and never changes, not true. The nature of the parties themselves change over time.
Interesting. So it sounds like there's a structural piece with the filibuster, but also changing politics as well.
Very much so. And this, the rigidity, the inability of people to find common ground. In American politics, there was a period, if you could compromise, that was considered a good thing. I would argue today, if you compromise, you're quite often, at least by elements in each party, declared to be, you're surrendering or whatever. Our Democratic colleagues are going through that right now in terms of dealing with the Department of Homeland Security because of the controversy around Minnesota or whatever. Their voters are fanatical that President Trump, 65% of self-identified Democrats in this country think the president ought to be impeached. 65%. Now, think of what that means if you're a Democrat. The average Democrats, like the average Republicans, for most of us, you're actually an exception to this, Jeff. Most of us, the big race is our primary. I mean, 80 or 90% of the member of Congress, they're not going to get defeated in a general election. Their real race is, can I get the nomination? Who votes in those nominating conventions? The most active and generally extreme elements of both parties. So, believe me, most of our Democratic colleagues are not worried about winning in November. They're worried about their primary whenever that comes. And so what are they doing? They're catering to that 65% that want to impeach Donald Trump. And that's what they're interested in. And that sometimes happens in our own party. I mean, look, we shut down the government over Obamacare. I thought that was a bad decision then. Appropriators don't like government shutdowns. And I said so at the time. It wasn't the most popular position to have, but I would also point out, in retrospect, it didn't work. We shut down the government, and Obamacare is still here. We shut down the government over the wall in 2018, 2019. That wall didn't get finished until this president got reelected. Now we've got the money secured. Now that wall is going to be built. But shutting down the government is always a poor tactic. It never works. Appropriators have to work around that, keep the government working, and then let the natural political, politics run their course. Let's do big tax cuts. Let's do defense buildups. Let's make sure we get the wall built. And so I'm very proud of so many things the president has been able to accomplish. But shutting down the government never helped Donald Trump achieve any objective he had. It never helped any Democratic president achieve any objective, or any party. Nobody's ever showed me the shutdown that worked, but every one of them hurts the American people.
I agree. Chairman Cole, if you could wave a magic wand and redesign one aspect of the appropriations process, what would it be?
I probably would try to make sure that the people that are supposed to give us what we need to get the job done. Let me give you an example. We're supposed to get a budget from the President of the United States to consider by February 15th. Now, no new president can possibly make that goal because they don't even have their treasurer confirmed or their OMB director. But we need that early. Our own budget committee is supposed to produce a budget that we mark to. This is how much you can spend in discretionary budget. We haven't been able to pass that in 4 years. Now, as I always tell whoever's the budget chairman, and I think we got a very good one right now in Jody Arrington from Texas, I tell them, look, you being able to pass a budget out of budget committee doesn't mean anything to me because you've got a Republican majority. If you can't get that budget across the floor, how can I write 12 bills within that budget that can pass? I cannot. So what I need, the thing I would change is I would need, number one, a president that got us a budget as soon as possible, knowing the first year they're going to be off. After that, there's really not much excuse. But we will not get the budget when it's due this year. I've already been told that by OMB. Can you tell me when? And it's, well, we can't. So that could mean March, or that could mean early April. I've got to be marking up and having hearings. We don't just take the president's budget, any president, our own, meaning Republican or Democrat, and do that. They don't either. I mean, we have the power of the person. I've got to start the process. And then, our budget committee has got to be willing and able to write budgets that they can pass across the floor. Right. If they don't help me. So we never had a top line to mark to. Now, we actually, the last 2 years, have actually slightly lowered discretionary spending.
Right.
So we've held it flat, but it's actually a little bit lower in absolute terms. That saves you over a 10-year budget windows between $400 and $500 billion, because when it's in the budget line, it's there, and it's there for 10 years, and then there's another one added and another one added. So holding things flat is a way of saving money. But point is, I want the information sooner and quicker. And then the second thing is, I've got to have people willing to vote for the Republican bill, knowing it's the most conservative thing on the floor. The most conservative bill will always be the bill that comes out of the Republican Appropriations Committee. After that point, honestly, it's not going to get more conservative. It'll move to the left because it's got to get to where you get 60 senators. And most of our members, look, they're focused on what they're doing. I'm not critical of them, but they don't have to pass it. They can wait around until there's a Republican Senate and Republican House. I got to appropriate, and I've had to appropriate before, when there was a Democratic Senate, a Democratic President, and a Republican House. It's not going to look like what it comes out in a Republican House. It's going to have to move in ways that can attract Democratic votes and move in a way that a Democratic president is willing to sign it.
Right. I'm going to ask you a question or two about leadership and process. What is the difference between power and influence in Congress, and which one actually gets things done? And by that I mean there are members who hold formal titles and authority, and there are members who don't hold titles but still shape outcomes behind the scenes. In your experience, which matters more?
Well, you have to understand your power as a congressman is limited. The only real power you have as a congressman is you get to hire and fire who works for you. After that, everything else you do has to be part of a team. You can't do it on your own. Now, there's captains of the team and there's people sitting on the bench, but bench warmers are important too because they're going to play at some point in the game. So, power is literally what can you do on your own. Influence is what's your ability to persuade those with power. And every member has power. It varies, but if you got a vote, you got power. Look at the current things, and you can leverage it in very close. I don't mean this in any disparaging or judgmental way. Thomas Massie has an element of power because our margins are so close. He can work with Democrats, and all of a sudden you're talking about the Epstein files, whether you want to or not. Now, influence is a totally different matter. It's the ability to persuade something. So if you've got something that you think is important, you work with Chairman Westerman on your committee. You can't make him do anything, but he likes you. He's made you a subcommittee chairman, an important subcommittee in Native American affairs. You clearly have influence with him. And so you approach him, and you clearly have influence with your leadership. But over time, obviously, I have more power as a chairman than I did when I wasn't. but I was a subcommittee person, or I was a member on a committee, or I leverage it. And influence really matters when you're dealing across party lines. We have no power to make the Democrats do anything, but we had enough influence to get 21 Democrats, including Rosa DeLauro, my counterpart, to vote for Republican written appropriations bills and pass them. So influence waxes and wanes and is harder to chart. But I would actually tell you, influence in American government, given how divided power is, we know it is institutionally. We got a Senate, we got a House, but we know there's all kinds of more subtle divisions within those legislative bodies. It's the same way if you're dealing with a cabinet member. When I was chairman of the subcommittee of Health, Labor, and Human Services, they might not pay much attention to me at the Pentagon, but I guarantee you the Secretary of Labor cared what I thought, and the Secretary of Health and Human Services what I thought, and the Secretary of Education what I thought. And fortunately, I sat on the Defense Appropriations Subcommittee, so they cared a little bit about what I thought. But, you can rise to positions, and you have to figure out, for the things you believe in and your party stands for, and your local areas. You represent local people that have very specific needs, and where can I leverage the influence I have? I mean, I wanted to get to appropriations, for instance. When I first got here, I have a very heavy federal district. People, what's that mean? That means that there's 435 districts in the Congress of the United States. Mine is number 16 in the number of federal employees. And of the 15 above us, 7 are in Virginia, right around Washington, D.C., and 6 are in Maryland. So you get west of Maryland, the only places that have more federal employees in their districts are whoever represents Alaska, or our colleague, Mr. Begich, right now, and then whoever represents the district that has Pearl Harbor, because there's a large civilian workforce. So if you're in my district, you better get on a committee that can leverage and impact Tinker Air Force Base, Fort Sill Army Post, the National Weather Center, the Kerr Water Labs, important federal facilities that employ literally tens of thousands of my constituents, and that influence tens of thousands more because they work for contractors like Boeing and Raytheon and Pratt & Whitney or what have you. So, again, think through where you're at, what's important to your district, and move toward the committees that impact those things.
You mentioned Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro of Connecticut, the top Democrat on the Appropriations Committee. She's said nice things about you in the press recently, and I'm curious, and you just said some nice things about her as well. How did that relationship develop, and what do you know about her personally that most Republicans don't?
Well, I know quite a bit about her, and it developed personally because she was already what's called the ranking member on Labor H when I was put there, and we sort of knew one another, but we had never really worked together. I'd been on that committee very briefly at the beginning of my term before she was the ranking member. That committee had been unable to pass a bill out in 5 years, and so it was dealt with in continuing resolutions, not through real legislation. And when I became chairman, I called her up and said, "Why don't we have breakfast and get to know one another?" And we did. We found out we both like burned bacon, and I said, "Hey, look, I'm going to have a lot more hearings than my predecessor had, because I want to find out the things on this committee where we can work together." And I'm going to be. And she said, "Well, we're going to really mark up the bills," because she hadn't been to a markup in 5 years of a Labor H bill. I said, "We are going to mark up the bills. Now, you and I aren't going to agree on it probably, but I intend to get this bill out of committee, and then we'll see if we can get it across the floor. But I know I'll do better along the way if there's some things you and I find out that we have in common and can work on, and things that our members want to do in common." And we did that, and lo and behold, we produced a bill, and of course she voted against the bill in committee, and she should have, because it was a very Republican bill, but it contained some things she likes that we could build on. And over the course of it, we got to the point, because we had to get it through a Democratic Senate. Democrats control the Senate. This is 2015. We had a Democratic president. in President Obama. So, it's not like she wasn't with leverage at the table. But we got the bill passed, and we both voted for it. And we just built on that relationship. We got to know one another's people. We're as opposite. And I always say, if you see Rosa on the floor, she's got purple hair. She's stylishly but flamboyantly dressed. She's a liberal lioness. The rhetoric is over the top. And I'm out there, and I'm little Mr. Republican in my blue suit, my red tie, and I'm kind of like level in my talking. And a wild day for me is a blue shirt. That's a big deal. So we look like the odd couple, as Rahm Emanuel called us once. And I guess we are stylistically. But we both worked on congressional staffs before. She was Chris Dodd, former senator from Connecticut's chief of staff, and she knows the life and the process as a staffer. We found the areas we had in common. We both think biomedical research is important. We both think help for first-generation college students, because that changes the life cycle of a whole family over generations. And we both found that we had an interest in early childhood education, where we thought, getting kids an opportunity early made a difference. People don't know this about Rosa, but she represents a big defense district. There's a lot of defense in her Sikorsky helicopters. There's submarine bases and manufacturing facilities in Connecticut. So we found the areas we could get along together. And I think we genuinely appreciated one another's political skills. She's a natural politician, and ability to work with other people at the same time. So, I call her an Italian grandmother, which she is, by the way. But if you don't think she's a wily and candy politician who's tough as nails, then you've misjudged her. But if you also think she's a liberal that can never compromise with you, you've misjudged her there, too.
Interesting.
Most politics are like, you have to decide early on in your career, am I going to Washington, D.C. to make a difference, or am I going to make a point? If you're just here to make a point, that's fine. But real legislative accomplishment almost always takes give and take and compromise, which is the way the founders intended it to be. They didn't want one group or one part of the country or one party, which they didn't like parties, dictating things. They wanted to divide up power and force us to work together to find common solutions. And as messy and difficult as that is, it's been going on for 250 years, and it's created the freest, most secure, and most powerful society in the world and country in the world. So I think the founders had a pretty good idea what they were doing.
Yeah, I just finished a book on the ideological origins of the American Revolution. I have a lot of airplane time living in Western Colorado, and so I get to read books. And one of the themes that I saw clearly from that book and the literature around the founding was the founders' concern about the concentration of power. And I think you're exactly right. Okay, we are going to move now to the lightning round. Quick questions, quick answers.
Okay.
First, your favorite book?
Boy, that is a very tough district. Probably right now I'd say The Splendid and the Vile. It's a book on Churchill at the time that Churchill and England stood alone.
And that was what you studied. I don't know if we mentioned. What did you study when you were in academia?
I was a British historian, and modern Britain was the era. My real specialty was 19th century Britain, the Victorian era, but I taught modern British history.
If Congress were a football team, what position would the Appropriations Chair play?
Probably would be, the captain of the offensive line, so probably the center.
Which chamber is tougher, the House of Commons or the U.S. House?
The U.S. House is tougher because in Commons, all power is centralized in a single institution. You have executive power, you have legislative power, you even have a measure of judicial power in the House of Commons. So if you run it, you really run it, and their majorities are more reliable. Here, a lot of I criticize some of our fellow Republicans. They seem to think the Speaker is the Prime Minister. He's not. There's a Senate that things have to go through. There's a president, and there's a court system that can say, even if you guys all agree, we think you're wrong, and they kick it over. So power is so diffused in the United States politically as compared to other advanced countries that it takes a really good politician to get things done in a variety of things. So I think it's much tougher to operate in the House of Representatives than it is in the Democratic or in the House of Commons, particularly given the party discipline in Britain compared to the absence of it here. And again, our founders did not want disciplined parties.
Thanks. Very reasonable observations. Coffee or whiskey?
Oh, whiskey. But I like them both. Coffee's good in the morning.
Former member of Congress that you respected a lot?
Probably, well, I wouldn't even say former. I'll give you a current one. Well, former member I respected the most would have been, are we talking historically or within my experience?
Within your experience.
Big fan of Don Nichols, who was a senator from Oklahoma for 20 years, youngest guy in the Senate for 16 years, by the way. Elected at 31 years old, thought he was a very effective legislator. In the House, probably Henry Hyde. I thought exceptional legislator, incredible man of principle, and unbelievable on the floor in a speech. People would come down to the floor to listen to Henry Hyde speak. Nobody but my mother would come to listen to me speak.
All right, final question. What is your why? What keeps you going after more than 2 decades serving the people of Oklahoma?
I love it. I think I'm a very privileged man. I always tell people, if you're in Congress, there's roughly about 14,000 people that have been in the House since 1789. What kid growing up didn't want to play in the NFL? There's 26,000 people who've played in the NFL since 1920s. Who didn't want to play Major League Baseball? Since 1881, there's been about 22,000 Major League Baseball. So if you're playing at this level, you are playing in the political equivalent of the major leagues. And the opportunity to do things to advance, no matter how frustrating it is, to advance the things you care about locally, in your district, and your state that are parochial affairs, the chance to have a role in the national debate, the chance to make a difference in the most important, greatest country on the face of the planet. I mean, what a privilege.
My guest today has been Oklahoma's 4th Congressional District Representative and Chairman of the House Committee on Appropriations, Tom Cole. Chairman Cole, thank you for joining us.
Jeff, thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to Hurd in the House. For more on today's episode and updates from Colorado's 3rd District, check out my YouTube and social media channels at Rep. Jeff Hurd. That's REPJEFFHURD. And subscribe to my newsletter at hurd.house.gov, HURD.house.gov, and let's stay connected. Until next time, you heard it here first.